Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Now, one of the biggest names in the City of London, Sir Martin Sorrell, is stepping down as the chief executive of the global advertising agency WPP after 33 years. The news comes after the company's board launched an investigation into an allegation of improper personal conduct. Our City editor, Mark Kleinman, who broke this story last night, updates us.
It creates adverts for the world's leading brands and spins public relations messages for some of its most powerful people. But while you may never have heard of WPP, the chances are you'll recognise this man.
I make no apologies for having been part of building that company from zero or ground zero to where it is now.
Few companies are as synonymous with their founder as Sir Martin Sorrell and WPP, a manufacturer of wire baskets that he took over in 1985 and transformed into the world's biggest provider of marketing services. But as Sky News revealed last night, his 3 decades as chief executive are over, brought to an abrupt halt less than a fortnight after the company said it was investigating an allegation of personal misconduct against him. In his farewell message to staff, he said, "The current disruption is simply putting too much unnecessary pressure on the business. That is why I have decided that in your interest and in the interest of all our other stakeholders, it is best for me to step aside." The WPP chief did not address the allegation against him, but sources close to the company said that by resigning voluntarily, he would be eligible to retain roughly £19 million in shares that could pay out over the next 5 years. Sir Martin's remuneration has long been a flashpoint in the city. In 2015, he received a £70 million pay package, prompting a rebuke from some investors. His total pay the following year dropped to £48.1 million, but he was still the best paid FTSE 100 boss. And he directly holds about 1.5% of WPP, worth roughly £225 million at Friday's closing share price.
It's really hard to imagine somebody else coming in and running WPP in its current form in the way that Martin has. So not only is it a very complex company that requires a level of knowledge that is almost unique to Sir Martin, but the company itself looks less fit for purpose in today's market.
Meanwhile, for Sir Martin, a former director of Formula One's parent company, a stellar career looks to have reached a sudden checkered flag. Mark Kleinman, Sky News.
More now on the news which Sky broke last night, the resignation of Sir Martin Sorrell, who is standing down as head of the world's biggest advertising agency, WPP, after 33 years as chief executive. He has denied allegations of personal misconduct. We're joined now from Newport Pagnell by Paul Blanchard, Managing Director of the public relations firm Right Angles. Paul, thanks for your time. You interviewed him a few years ago. Why such the sudden end?
Yes, I present a media podcast as well as one of my hobbies, and I had him in his office for an hour and was incredibly impressed by his strength and determination. I mean, for me, I think he wanted to stay on until the bitter end. So, this is not how Sir Martin wanted to walk away. I think we can all agree that this so-called retirement, the closing of the investigations, strikes to me as a kind of backroom deal that's sparing the blushes of everyone concerned, not least the board of WPP themselves. It also protects Sir Martin's financial arrangements as well. He'll still get his share payments, he'll still get his pension, etc. I think that they've, for someone who's so well versed in advising clients on their own PR and reputational issues, I think he's listened to some of the people at a senior level within his own business, and they've all decided to walk away with as much dignity as possible.
Given the allegations and the speed of the resignation, is that the end of him? Will we not see any more of him, or do you expect him to do something else in the near future?
No, I don't think we've seen the last of Sir Martin at all. I mean, I've met him several times, interviewed him. He's one of the most driven people, one of the most disciplined people I've ever met. One of my team actually used to work for him, and he used to call them on Christmas Day asking for updates on clients, things. This is a man who just works 24/7, who is utterly defined by his job. And I think this deal that's sparing everyone's blushes allows him to do something else. So I certainly don't think that we've seen the last of him. I do think, though, that WPP and Sir Martin are suffering from what's called founder syndrome, where WPP is less relevant now than ever. He admitted himself last year that it's taken a walloping in terms of a lot of the advertising and PR spend has gone to the likes of Google and Facebook, and where his traditional expertise lay, which was in traditional media, that's not where the money is, unfortunately. And I think it is time for him to move on. It's just a shame that he's not left in circumstances that he would like, given the amazing business that he's built up. But on the other hand, I think ultimately he's been holding it back. And I also think that WPP have been left with a bit of a power vacuum because because he was so dominant. Another aspect of the founder syndrome is that there's been no succession planning. So I think there's been a rude awakening for all concerned here. WPP has to go on, but they have to deal with that power vacuum.
Given the allegations of personal misconduct which has been investigated, which he denies, the company also saying that the allegations didn't involve amounts that were material to WPP. Given his pay packet, his length of service, will we find out what's been going on there? Should we find out what's been going on there?
Well, I mean, I personally would like to know, and I think it's in his own long-term interest to protect his reputation that people know. Sunlight is, of course, the best disinfectant, as I advise my own clients. But this was an internal WPP investigation. This was an internal whistleblower, and the board have made an investigation which they've brought by mutual agreement, it seems, to an early close and allowed him to take retirement. So to me, this does smack of a backroom deal, something to spare the blushes of everyone concerned. But ultimately, I do think that that's going to harm the long-term prospects for Sir Martin. There's going to be lingering doubts as to what's happened here. And, I think for the good of his own reputation and the good of his legacy, he has to deal with that. But that's something that he'll want to deal with in the coming weeks and months. The problem for WPP is, of course, is those dollars are now going to Google and to Facebook and to social media. They have to catch up. Whoever is going to replace Sir Martin has to play catch-up, and pretty quickly as well.
Yeah, they have a wider problem. Paul, listen, thanks for your time.
Pleasure.
The founder and chief executive of the world's largest advertising group, WPP, Sir Martin Sorrell, has resigned less than a fortnight after it announced that he was being investigated for misconduct. He leaves WPP after 33 years in the job. Sir Martin denies any wrongdoing, as our business editor Simon Jack explains.
Advertisers want you to remember the products they're selling, not the name of the company that made the ads. Many of the biggest ad agencies, marketing companies and PR firms in the world are owned by an even bigger one. It's called WPP and was founded and run since 1985 by this man, Sir Martin Sorrell. He gobbled up dozens of businesses over the years, creating a £15 billion global giant. A big figure on the world business stage, his views were sought after.
If the EU does not give on that, then our access.
And he was happy to oblige. After 33 years at the top, he stepped down with immediate effect after recent accusations he may have misused WPP funds, claims he denies. Meanwhile, upstarts have changed the industry, with more advertisers going direct to Facebook and Google rather than via WPP agencies. The company's lost a third of its value, prompting this farewell statement. The current disruption we're experiencing is simply putting too much unnecessary pressure on the business. That is why I have decided that it's in the interests of our clients, in the interest of our share owners and our other stakeholders, it's best for me to step aside. His critics say he was overpaid and ran the company like his own private fiefdom, when in fact he owned less than 2%. Some shareholders told the BBC it was time for a change.
For many in the world of advertising, Sir Martin Sorrell was more of a money man than an ad man, treating it like a professional service rather than a creative industry. But he was a powerful advocate for it, and in his departure, British business has lost a true giant. Simon Jack, BBC News.
Now, as boss of one of the biggest global advertising agencies, Sir Martin Sorrell's rubbed shoulders with some of the world's most powerful people for 3 decades and more. But now he's standing down from the helm of the agency, WPP, the multi-billion-pound business that he built from scratch after allegations of misuse of company funds. Sir Martin denies any wrongdoing. Richard Pallow reports.
Some of the biggest global brands, the likes of Coca-Cola and Ford, are companies that you will have heard of, but they rely on their products being brought to your attention by a firm that you may not have. WPP is the biggest advertising agency in terms of revenue worldwide, and now the man that set it up has quit with immediate effect. Sir Martin Sorrell was paid nearly £50 million last year, the highest of any FTSE 100 boss. And over the decades, he has had the ear of prime ministers and become one of the most successful British businessmen of recent times.
Most people on the street don't know who Martin Sorrell is, that's the truth. In business circles, he's probably the best known captain of industry in Britain. And to put it in another way, about a third of the TV ads you see on ITV come from WPP, his company.
It's not a particularly pretty environment at the moment, as you know.
This was him speaking to students at Oxford University a few years ago. But now, after allegations of personal misconduct, he stepped down from the firm he created 33 years ago. He denies any wrongdoing, but in a statement said, "As I look ahead, I see that the current disruption is simply putting too much unnecessary pressure on the business. That is why I have decided it is best for me to step aside." Although the headquarters of WPP are here in London, the company is influential in all corners of the globe, employing more than 200,000 people. But given its founder once said that he would carry on as long as he could, many will be wondering why Sir Martin Sorrell's departure is quite so sudden. Those working at WPP will be all too aware, though, that the company's share price has dropped by 40% in the last year, partly as the firm struggles to adapt to the fast-moving world of digital advertising. A spokesperson for WPP said tonight that the investigation came to a natural conclusion and Sir Martin stepped down. An abrupt end, steeped in mystery and far from the retirement that he would have planned. Richard Pallo, ITV News.